Hey guys, welcome back to the Cole Classic Kid Show. Today we have to talk about Sony because honestly, I think Sony might have screwed the pooch on this when it comes to the Activision Blizzard King deal with Microsoft. They have been very insistent on doing every petty thing in their power to stop this deal from going through. I mean, look, it's their right to raise a problem with this deal. I don't necessarily blame them for doing it. As a company, you have to expect a company to play its hand in its best interest. But, the past couple of weeks, it has been pretty much excessive to the point of Jim crying Ryan whining just excessively to the pettiest of, if Sony doesn't get a decent port of Call of Duty, it's over for our entire platform, essentially throwing all of PlayStation's developers under the bus, saying that pretty much they ain't shit. But I think that continuing to go down this path and get extremely petty about it has really kind of backfired on PlayStation, guys. And let's just get right into it here. So, U.S. Senator asked Sony CEO to reveal PlayStation's game exclusivity deals. Kevin Kramer is the latest senator to accuse Sony of anti-competitive behavior. Now, look, guys, I in no way endorse the U.S. government by any means. Honestly, it's one of, if not the most corrupt things I've ever witnessed in my entire life, having lived here my entire life. So, in no way do I necessarily pick a side here. I don't fuck with the government. Let's just put it that way. But with that being said, it is what it is in regards to the way the government is. You choose to support this government, and well, you got a corrupt government. So it is what it is. I'm not really going to get into that side of it, whether the government is corrupt for doing what they're doing. I'm just simply going through what is presented here. So a U.S. senator has written an open letter to Sony's CEO requesting information on the company's game exclusivity deals. North Dakota Republican Senator Kevin Kramer says he sent a letter to Sony CEO Kenshiro Yoshida regarding its anti-competitive behavior and to request information on companies' acquisition agreements. So, I mean, look, guys, Sony's issue is with the Microsoft Activision Blizzard King acquisition. Meanwhile, Sony does deals of their own. So I guess they're just going to bring all this to the forefront. And this doesn't seem good for Sony because, well, they might have to show off a lot of stuff that they have planned in the future when it comes to discovery. That's a term, legally when stuff happens. Basically, when you're in a legal issue as a company, discovery is a point in which a company does not want government or a lawsuit to go into, because then basically all your dirty laundry gets put out there in regards to everything you got going on. So I'm sure Sony definitely doesn't want to go down this route by any means. In the letter, Kramer says Yoshida that he is tells Yoshida that he's writing to express concern about Sony's efforts to protect its gaming console business from competition. He goes on to claim, "I'm certain Sony's dominance of that market and its efforts to perpetuate its current position imperils an important economic development opportunity for North Dakota." Gotta love how how senators or people in government blatantly just use its people in order to waste our money. Let's just put it that way. The government is best at wasting our money, and this to me is just it's all just a giant waste of money. Kramer states that North Dakota has developed a strategy to lead the nation in computer science and cybersecurity education, and that preparing students for careers in gaming is an important component of this effort. Given the growing significance of the gaming industry to North Dakota, Kramer says, "I'm troubled by reports Sony appears to leverage its convenience to exclude competition rather than enabling choice for players and developers." So it's kind of one of those things where US government doesn't really understand gaming for the most part. They don't understand a lot of things they make laws for. It's one of these things where just we've always had deals in the industry. Some of them suck. A lot of them tend to suck. But it just comes with gaming. It is what it is. You can't force a developer to put their game on a platform that they have no interest in putting their game on. If they feel as though it'd be a waste of money, I mean, that's how a lot of Japanese developers treat the Xbox platform. They say, well, we're only going to sell a few thousand copies on the Xbox, so we're not going to waste time and resources developing an Xbox port because that shit just isn't worth the goddamn time or money. That's just what it is. It's a waste of resources. That happens in many different avenues. But on Kramer adds, increasingly, it appears Sony's dominance is attributed to exclusionary practices, including paying game publishers not to distribute their games on rival platforms. So, yeah, basically, third-party deals that Sony has with publishers is basically his leverage against the ABK deal. And it's like, it is what it is on both of these fronts. I don't necessarily like either of these things, but they just happen. So, I mean, I'm not really here to say which is worse. I think, overall consolidation in the gaming industry will end up being a bad thing. Not necessarily because Microsoft, it's more so just the act of the industry consolidating is never a good thing. It becomes less competition overall. And then, yeah, third-party deals tend to be taking games or specific content away from other platforms, which I'm not really into either. But I digress. A company that has said product, which is the game, has the right to distribute that product the way that they feel. If Sony or Microsoft offers a boatload of cash to this company, and they're like, man, this money right now could really help with our financial situation, we'll take the money and make a piece of content or a game exclusive to this platform. It is what it is. I mean, as someone that believes in ownership, I know there's a lot of weird ass people that don't. Self-ownership is important to me. While I don't like what goes on in the gaming industry, I still devolve to self-ownership because that's just an important right to living. But then he goes on to claim that Sony's attempt to oppose Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard is an example of its anti-competitive conduct, saying it's even more troubling that Sony's lobbying of the FTC and other regulators began shortly after Sony itself acquired Bungie. I mean, let's be real now. Sony are full of, they are the biggest hypocrites because they do the same thing too. It is what it is. Sony just can't play to the scale that Microsoft can play because Sony ain't got the money like that. But they sure as hell do the same shit, and they're over here crying because they just don't have that kind of money to spend like Microsoft does. Look, you guys engage in the same situations. It's just Sony's situations are less bank overall that they could spend. They don't have nearly as much of a purse as Microsoft does. So they're butthurt about it. It is what it is. And now that the way that they're acting, this senator is actually calling out their hypocrisy, which I do find kind of funny. Kramer ends his letter by asking Yoshida to unredacted copies of all agreements that give Sony an exclusive right to distribute third-party game, all agreements between Sony and third-party publishers that prevent them from releasing their games on other systems, all internal company documents describing the strategic rationale for Sony's decision to acquire Bungie, and all correspondence with U.S. government or regulatory agencies related to video game competition. This is what Sony should be afraid of the most. Basically, this could really, really hurt them. I don't think they were expecting for things to get this far, but it has. And this is essentially discovery. I'm not sure if this is forced, this is mandatory. He's simply asking, but an ask can eventually, if Sony doesn't, show up with what he's asking for, there could be, calls for the US government to demand. And at that point, that's discovery. And guess what? A lot of this stuff that Sony's deals and all their, upcoming projects or third-party dealings with publishers and all that could end up getting out to the general public. And that's the last thing Sony wants. Sony wants to play things at their own terms. And I believe that Sony should be able to play things at their own terms. It's their business dealings. It's their right. So essentially, we could end up finding out a lot of what Sony has coming up because of what is going on here. Kramer's letter makes him the latest U.S. member of Congress to accuse Sony of engaging in anti-competitive behavior. Last month, 2 letters, one from the Republican member of Congress, the other from 6 Democrats, accused Sony of deliberately making exclusive deals with third-party publishers to ensure Xbox doesn't gain a foothold in Japan. Personally, there's nothing Xbox can do to gain a foothold in Japan. They've tried it for many generations now. It is not possible. You cannot force a country full of people to buy your fucking box if they don't want to. This has been proven every generation of Xbox's existence. They've tried. And every generation they have failed miserably. And you can't blame every single generation on Sony specifically. Come on now. The letters called on U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo to raise the issue with Japan during trade talks. Look, Sony needs to do whatever they need to do to get out of this situation. I think that a lot of these U.S. senators and whatnot, Congress members, actually pull back while you can. Yeah, because they're coming after Sony here, man, and it's like it's essentially a scare tactic. It seems like, and this is what the government does. It is what it is. Like I said, so this could potentially be terrible for Sony, and they put themselves in this position by essentially being hypocrites. It's kind of is what it is. I mean, look, no shame in the game, right? They all do it. So I'm not like, throwing shade at Sony for doing what they do, for making their deals, even if they do end up in some ways being detrimental to gamers, some gamers in the community, but they all engage in this. Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they're all in on it. So it is what it is. The government's trying to put a foothold in the industry. And that, I'm fearful of the most, because when government gets involved, regulations become problematic, because in a perfect world scenario, regulations could be good, but this isn't a perfect world scenario. Government always overreaches, oversteps, and ruins everything that it puts a foothold in. So I would prefer if the government, as much as possible, just stayed the fuck out of gaming. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this. You can like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me over on Twitter or Kick if you want to continue the conversation. Consider becoming a channel member if you'd like to join my growing Discord server. And guys, with all being said, I'm out. Peace.